something that I would like to say is I would like to give a big thanks to Mr. Hay. He was our welding teacher. I want to say thank you because he actually this was like a really big opportunity for us because of his connections. His friend was a certifier and he was actually able to come in and take his time, which took about like 6 hours or 7 hours that he was there at the high school. And while he was there, I was talking to him and I was asking him, so you go around. I asked him if he goes around to other schools and he does this for his job, and he said no, that he only does this for Mr. Hay because they're such good friends and everything. So I was very thankful for Mr. Hay to go out of his way and ask his friend if he can come over here and give us such this opportunity. Because usually you would need to go to a company or any workplace basically, and you need to take their test there. But here we can just do it here at the school for free, and we have all the time to do it, so we don't feel rushed. And we had weeks and weeks of practice, and throughout that entire time, Mr. Hay was there with us, giving us guidance, helping us out. He was letting us come in after school if we needed help, and he was just super respectful and kind throughout the whole thing. And and yeah, that was pretty much it. You know, it was kind of like it was a rare experience, and not everyone got to do it, so we were one of the very lucky few. So we're just hoping that Mr. Hay can continue to come back and give other kids the opportunity too, because we have some other friends too who are not seniors, but they still did their welding test and everything, and even they got certified. So we had Kason Alvarez. He's a sophomore right now, and he's already certified at 15 years old. So you know, I think that's something that he can easily put on his resume and already puts him way ahead of other people in his grade. So I'm just very grateful that we had that opportunity because of Mr. Hay. And that's all we have to say.
Can I ask some questions?
Of course.
How long was the course that you had to take before you were ready to test?
So the course was basically the entire trimester with about a week or 2 weeks off in the very beginning because we had to do a bunch of safety and fire, just like safety work that we had to do before we actually got to start welding. And after that, there was a bunch of times where Mr. Hay had to be gone for FFA or when we had subs, so we couldn't weld. But I think it was basically the entire trimester, which was around 2 months. And we were just, the day of, he just told us, like, okay, you guys practice. And we learned, and he walked us through every single step. So the day of, we were just able to go out and do our best. Yeah.
Do any of you have expectations to go into welding, like for a career?
I want to go to attend trade school and get a job as a welder, hopefully in the future. And yeah, I just want to work with trucks and diesel and stuff like that. And yeah, just really enjoy it and stuff like that. So yes, I'm planning to attend trade school. So yeah.
Great.
Well, that was my question too. So with this certification, like, can you get a job now? Do you want to, you mentioned trade school. What's the plan now with certification?
Yeah, so I talked to Mr. Haight about it just a little bit because I was kind of interested. So this kind of just like puts you ahead of the game. So like when we took this test, he was like, because the Othello School isn't like a welding company, you won't be able to get a job from this place, but it shows other employers that you would go and take their tests, that you know what you're doing and you're a higher level than if you just went in with nothing. And so it gets you a higher chance of, one, being able to test, and two, passing the test, obviously, because we have practice. For the welding program, so first you got to start off with beginning welding, and then you move on to advanced. So it's like 2 trimesters of thing. But
And so is this beginning or is this advanced?
this was advanced.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you had to take the first part and then pass that one, and then you can go on to advanced and do the certification test.
Wow. Well, good for you guys. That's incredible. Like, well done. Very cool.
And then here are the certificates that we did, that we were given.
Great job.
Thank you.
Hey guys, one of the things we do when we have folks come in for recognition is we like to take a picture with the school board to celebrate your achievement and to put that out there. I know there's only 3 of you of the 8, but are you guys willing to take a picture with us? All right. We'll bring the board forward and snap one for social media.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you again for coming to our
Thank
school
you.
board meeting tonight. Have a good night.
Just one additional comment I think can make a connection between what you just heard about welding certification and what we're experiencing with our CDL class. Even if those trainings and certificates don't lead to direct employment, what we're discovering is employers will reach out to our kids and say, wow, they've had that training, they do have a leg up, and they're getting recruited to come into some of these trades and fields. And so even if it is just in preparation for the real test, tremendous opportunities and doors being open for our kids that are interested in the trades for sure.
Absolutely. And how long has welding been offered at the high school?
For years, yeah.
Long time?
Our growth in our ag program in the last 4 years has drastically grown. We could actually use another ag teacher because the student requests are so high.
Great.
And Amy, Paris, and Nick Kate have done amazing work in trying to get this certification for a really long time. And we just managed to make it happen this year.
Wow. Well, thank you. That's an amazing program. So thank you for setting students up for success.
One other note in the CTE field that I think is brand new and talking about class size, and I know Principal Atchison and some of the folks in our guidance office, Dr. Meek, has been creating the master schedule for next year. I think we're in the market for another semi to purchase an additional truck to create more opportunities so kids could get through their hours a little more quickly. So, yeah, some exciting things happening in CTE for sure at the high school.
That's great.
We only have one instructor or 2?
We have 2. They sort of share the experience. But you remember in driver's ed did you take driver's ed in high school? Yeah, so they would put 3 of you in a car and one would drive to Moses Lake and one would drive back. Well, our current vehicle, you can only put the instructor and 1 student. So they drive out 20 miles and then they come back and have to switch it out. But the vehicle that they're looking at would allow them, I think it has the sleeper cab option. So you could throw 3 kids in, drive 30 miles out, take shifts driving back, and just cycle them through a lot more experiences. So I think we're in the market for something like that.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on to our student representative reports.
That was our section right there, the welders.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem. Well, I didn't see you welding anything, Miles, so next time come prepared with something that you've done, huh? Just kidding.
Oh, actually, yeah, we have one thing. We recently
Okay.
competed in our FBLA state competition. So us 2, Isabel, me and Isabel, and I think 7 other kids. Jesse, the guy in the blue shirt who just left, he was also there. We competed hard. It was a tough crowd. I think we did really well. As a chapter 2, that was our biggest. No, sorry, last year was a race, but this was our second biggest, and we had a freshman too. So, those are very rare in the clubs. Yeah, it was a great experience. We got to go on the ferry to Seattle and Bainbridge, and a shout out to Mrs. Shank. I had Mr. Shank all week. It was a blast. It was a blast. I loved it.
How did you guys do?
Oh, we got wiped
We
a little
didn't
bit.
place, but Jesse made it to finals,
Yeah.
but he didn't place for the top 10. But it was a very fun experience. We were
Good.
there at Bellevue for 4 days with also Mr. Shank and Terry Perez and Isaac Gonzalez there.
Great, well, congratulations. I'm glad you guys went and did that. We will move on to our board member discussions, starting with our legislative report from Director Gerber.
Yep, so the legislative session ended over the weekend. We still don't have all the details on everything they decided, but basically what we're hearing from WAS and everything is that we got some increases, some good increases for our funds, but not near as much as they were hoping for, not near as much as they asked for. The original, I have kind of the email in front of me about all of this. The originally projected 16 billion proposed revenue package, and the governor rejected it twice. He didn't want to raise taxes that much, so it was originally 16 billion, ended up at 8 billion, and so a lot of those cuts did hit the K-12 education funds. One good thing, we did get the multiplier for special ed students. That did increase, which is something that WASA was hoping for. So there'll be more funding per special education student for the schools, so we're really excited about that. MSOC was one that they wanted a huge increase in the funding, and they got a bit of an increase. I think in the paragraph it calls it a nominal increase. So good, but not near what they were hoping for. So yeah, but it's over for now. We'll be hearing in the next couple weeks exactly how that's going to affect us all.
Great. We have a board meeting adjustment on June 9th. We're going to move the board meeting to 1 p.m. to accommodate DOHS graduation. Is that an issue for anybody?
I do want to provide a comment. I saw this on the board agenda, but and this is sort of I guess a good news, bad news situation is the way to say it. The work and the integration between DOHS and Othello High School has been moving along so well that there's some interest in combining the ceremonies. So this year, there's still some conversations that need to be had, particularly at DOHS at the site to finalize that determination, but we think that'll happen in the next day or two. But I didn't want to make you aware of that. We'll leave that on there as a tentative placeholder, but we might actually just move forward and have everybody there that same night. So.
Great. Okay, well, keep us posted on that.
Yep.
We have several things coming up. The scholarship night, May 6th at 5:30 p.m. And then we have OHS graduation, June 6th at 8 p.m. Potentially DOHS graduation, June 9th at 6 p.m. The middle school promotion, June 13th at 9 a.m. And so we need to get those on our calendars. Okay, we're gonna find out who's going to those. So maybe get out your calendars. For scholarship night, I will be there.
I'll be there too.
OHS graduation, I will be there.
I will be there as well.
DOHS graduation, if it happens separately, I will be there as well. Is anyone else available for DOHS graduation? Oh.
Silent bidder down there.
Sorry, I didn't see Azaro's silent hand.
If it's on the 9th, but if it's, I won't be here for the high school graduation.
Okay, so sounds like Azaro, Ken, and myself will all be available for DOHS graduation if it's held separately. And middle school promotion, June 13th
I'll
at
be
9
there.
a.m.
I'll be there for that.
I won't go enjoy.
Okay,
We'll figure it out.
it'll be me and Aaron. Can you send invites for those? Thanks, Marisa. Okay, so we need to talk about our vacancy on the board. I don't know what to say, but we have an open position that we need to fill. So if you guys, we're gonna throw this out to the audience, because clearly we have failed at trying to drum up a candidate. If you guys know of anyone who's willing to run for school board, please have them apply for our open position. We also have several of the board members that will be, their positions will be open and they'll be running next month. So if there's anyone in the community interested in school board positions, please throw your hat in the ring. Anything else?
I think
Yeah,
at first, go ahead.
I was just sitting here thinking, Sharon, why don't you finish filling it for the rest of the year? And if somebody puts their name on the ballot?
Not to put you on the hot seat,
Not to
Sharon,
put you on
but
the hot seat,
it is your
but
district.
It is your district, and you filled that position before.
Well, think about it. Or start recruiting some of your neighbors, but we need somebody. Aaron, did you?
Well,
wanna
no, I was
say-
just going to mention at the beginning, we were kind of hands off, like we got all the announcements and information out there, hoping to get applicants and just see what we got. But I think now we're shifting into recruitment mode. I was recruited by a board member, and so then that can happen. So.
We are not too proud to beg. So please, 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 if you know somebody, send them our way.
Pete, I need you to look into if it would help, because mine is an open spot of me stepping down in the spot that I'm at and run for that other one to see if that
So-
would help bring somebody else from a different area. And I
So
could
you want me to,
see if there's
Yeah.
any interest in,
so the procedural part of it would be, you would vacate your current position as an at-large member, fill this Director 2 position, and then
Rerun
run
it.
again, and then repost, and then some of the interest we have had people interested that don't live in the right area. I see what you're saying. Okay, I can chase that down.
If we did that, that would mean that all of us would be up, all the positions would be up for re-election this year. So, something to think about.
well, I'm sorry.
Things are gonna get wild in 2025. Okay,
Pete, you might end up with a whole new board.
yep. Okay. We will move on to our required approvals. At this time, I will accept a motion to approve the required approvals.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second for the required approvals. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 4-0. We'll go ahead and move on to superintendent informational items and hand things over to Director Perez.
Yeah, I want to go in reverse order if I may. That way we can transition at the graduation update to Principal Atchison and Principal Tovar. You'll see a document link there, a PDF about athletics right sizing. Mike Don, our athletic director, did an analysis of our league comparables, everyone in our league. And one of the anomalies in Othello is we have a number of varsity assistants. Those are the positions and the current salaries attached to them. And below, there's some talking points about a consideration for that we're going through to determine whether or not we want to continue to fund and fill those positions. I think the reason it's important for the board to be aware of that is those are programs that certainly a lot of our students participate in. It might be there might be parents and varsity head coaches who reach out to you and say, how can I possibly do this when I've had a varsity assistant for 10 years? Well, the model out there when we think about all of the positions in our school district is to make sure that we're meeting the standard and the sort of general accepted practices. In this particular area, we're a little out of alignment. So I wanted to make you aware of the number and the concept and certainly give you a heads up when and if we decide to go down this road, but I wanted you to be aware of that because, again, a number of students and staff impacted with this kind of move.
Pete, I don't see football up there.
Yes, so what you see here are the programs in the CWAC and the programs in Othello where we're out of alignment. So the reason you don't see football or whatever other sports are missing from there is because those sports are already in alignment.
Is there like a metric to however many kids play? Do you get this many assistants or?
Yeah, really good question. There are safety metrics that are different for each sport. So if you have 100 football players, you need this many coaches from a safety perspective. If you have 30 basketball players, you need this many. So yeah, there's definitely metrics that we use, Miles, to determine that. These varsity assistant positions are really there to help the varsity coaches be successful and run their programs and step in when they're not there. And again, they're contributing to our programs and contributing to what we're putting out there. Again, we're trying to analyze
But at what cost?
there you go. Yeah, and how do we compare to other folks in our league that are offering the same activities at in a comparable way?
That's the difference between both of ours, or
Say again?
so like, is that the difference?
No, it's just the total expense.
Like, we're paying $33,000 more than other schools in the CWAC, correct?
Exactly. And we may get down to the road where we determine that's worth our investment. But I wanted you to be aware of it. I think we have some time to make this decision and determination. The reason that I thought it was important was the number of students and the number of families that are impacted who participate in these things. And you often get questions about athletics. And so it's me giving you a heads up, prepping you for that conversation, and we can check in the coming weeks. So this isn't a decision that needs to be made today, but I wanted you to start thinking about it and to be aware of the data around it.
One more thing with is the metric also including how much it costs? So like soccer, because there's probably more kids in there, is going to cost more per assistant coach?
Well, the salaries are established in much the same way. What does a coach in Quincy make? What does a coach in Grandview make? What does a coach in East Valley make? That's a negotiation between the coaches and the school district. Those are all very comparable and similar. And when you do an analysis like that, what you start to discover is, hey, we're spending money in ways that other districts aren't. Doesn't mean we shouldn't. It just means we're out of alignment a little bit.
Just out of curiosity, these numbers, are they coming from school districts the same size as ours, bigger, smaller?
It's only the school districts in our league.
Our league, okay.
Okay? So it's an FYI for now, something to be thinking about. Hopefully people who are watching the meeting or coaches in the area in our district might approach you about it, but I wanted you to be aware of it, and then we'll check in and see. This is sort of dipping our toe in the water and deciding if it's worth our effort, okay?
Okay.
All right, for the next item, I'm going to invite Dr. Meek forward and John Wiseman, and we're going to take you through, I think, a highly anticipated standards-based grading update. And so Mrs. Garza is going to call up the slides, and Miles and his two friends down there are going to get their pencils ready to ask some questions, and so hopefully we're ready for them. But a couple of weeks ago, I had an opportunity with John Wiseman and with our Teachers Association to spend the day at Othello High School. And we had a chance to engage with the staff, invite them in during their prep period to talk to them about the progress and considerations related to you have the clicker, huh? Yeah, you're good. You're good. Related to standards-based grading. And so I wanted to step back just a little bit and set the stage for the board and the community. And yeah, right there, John, let's just do those first three if we could. At the foundational level, what we want in all of our schools, Othello High School, McFarland, and all of our elementaries, we want it to be a safe place where adults work together, kids work together. What you heard our welding kids describe was, hey, we had a teacher who cared about us, so much so that he called his friend who could help us get certified and came in on a Saturday, and then they worked together to allow us to do this. That's a safe and supportive culture, right? We want to extend those opportunities, and we want that to exist in every school. We also want to make sure that we have highly skilled teachers in every classroom, and that the things that we teach them, if you take Algebra 9 from Teacher Gerber and Algebra 9 from Teacher Perez, you get a similar experience. You get the same level of rigor, and an A in Gerber is the same as an A in Perez, right? Whatever that standard is. Those are foundational in any school. Now, there are a couple of optional pieces that we want to talk about. And so, John, if you hit me with the next 2 clicks, maybe 3. These are optional things to consider. And what I want you to think about, that fourth one is standards reference reporting. And in that chunk, it really is, this is the conversation we're about to have. SBG, that's where you would put it. How are we reporting about how our kids are doing? So why do you think it's in the optional section?
I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, so it's optional how you report that.
Exactly. You can grade in a more traditional model, right, that we would call, or you can grade in a standards referenced way. But those 3 foundational things stay in there, right? And part of our rationale for moving this direction around standards-based grading was to improve those 3 foundational layers. It really was a tool and a resource, and that experience that day that I had with the teachers tells me that we've made a lot of progress. We've made a lot of progress in the first 3 areas because of what we've tried to do in Area 4. Question, Miles.
What is competency-based? What do you...
Competency-based education, you want me to take a shot at it? All right, I'll take, Dr. Meek is probably our expert around that, and certainly Assistant Superintendent Schenk. But competency-based education at its highest level, Miles, is you don't move on until you've mastered it. You don't move on until you're ready. So lots of times when the trimester ends, you know, you got your C, you move on, right? You take the next course. Not in this model. Until you demonstrate competency in every standard, you're staying in that path. It's a difficult model to put into practice in public schools. And what I heard from the standards-based grading folks that we listen to, it's aspirational. Man, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And so that's how I would articulate standards-based or competency-based.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, and he's right, is just that works both ways. And so it takes learning out of being a time-bound activity. Like right now we operate in trimesters, and we say that you're going to learn this chunk of information from the start of the trimester to the end of the trimester. In a true competency-based system, this is part of what makes it aspirational, is that some students are ready to move through that quicker than that. They're ready to meet competency at different points. And so it becomes a much more personalized education model than just a kind of a one-size-fits-all.
If we did happen to do that, would we cut out A and B sections? So like right now I'm taking East Washington University history, but I had trimester A in the fall, a gap, and then I'm finishing it now. Would it all, like if I could do B's work in A, would I do that? Would it just shift over and I don't take the second part?
The best way I can tell you is that that particular number 5 up there, not only is it aspirational, but it basically would take the school structures as we have them and tip them upside down. And so even things like bell schedules and trimesters would really have to be rethought altogether, because all of those are time-bound systems. And so we have to rethink, how do you measure progress, and then how and when do students move on to the next chunk of their learning? So a lot of things like that would have to shift in order to truly do that well.
I think based on your questions and how the conversation's going, this visual we could probably improve if we created a gap between 4 and 5. There really is another leap to get to that level of instruction. It really is changing the system. So the next few slides, we're going to talk about the current reality at Othello High School, and this is from the teacher perspective, and maybe we'll hear the student perspective. I'm going to look to John and Dr. Meek when it's their slides, because I may have already stole some of them. This one might very well be mine, so I'm looking for a signal. That's all you got to say. Just point at me and I'll know when to go. So thank you.
This is our dress rehearsal.
Yeah. So full implementation is underway at the high school, right? And we've had mixed feedback from teachers and families. I don't know if any board members have received any calls about standards-based grading. Okay, so again, mixed feelings about it. But what we discovered that day, a couple of words I've shared about the experience we had, it was very measured. And the vocabulary that our staff was using was different than they had the previous couple of years. It was, there were certainly some positive aspects and components and points of view around it, but there are also some concerns, and we're going to share both of those with you. We know that teachers are continuing to develop if you'll go back for me just a second, John. Teachers are developing and refining their assessments and their rubrics and their reporting tools and trying to figure all that out. And students and their families are adjusting to how we're reporting. What we also discovered is the time and energy we spent and expense on providing training and opportunity for teachers to develop proficiency scales. That was money well spent. And as we move down the road with SBG, we need to continue to invest in that professional development and opportunities for teachers to refine those components. It really sets the plan for what they want kids to learn and what they're going to do when they learn it and what they're going to do when they struggle. Those proficiency scales are so important, SBG or not.
All right, so as we went in and approached this, just as Peter talked about, we had recognized that some of the really, 30,000-foot view challenges that have been identified have been concerns from parents about transparency of the grading system. How do you track that? How do you confusion around that? And that teachers were struggling with the workload and that transition from traditional grading to standards-based grading, and some of the tools that we had available for them. And then the overarching need for additional training and support. So those were some of the sort of global challenges that we knew were out there. And so we decided to, as Dr. Perez said, to go and do a listening tour. And really, it was just that. It wasn't trying to lead or persuade one way or another, but to hear more directly from the end user, and in this case, from the teachers. And so we were looking for feedback. And when you think about what feedback really is, it's used for a basis of improvement. And that's what we want to do. We want to look at where we're currently at and say, what are the steps that we need to take to make this better? Whether that's to make it better within standards-based grading, or if that's to improve our system of pivoting. But we needed information. We needed to hear from that teacher voice. And so presented to the teachers, Dr. Perez went through and explained the process and then gave these sort of grading models to be able to look at. And Pete, I don't know if you want to go over those.
Yeah, I can, and I would ask the students and the board, as I describe each of these in briefly, which one do you think the staff picked? Like if you had to decide what happened here, I want you to make a prediction for yourself.
Reliable.
What's that?
Reliable.
Hey, can I get through them first? And then it's going to be a silent silent prediction, right? So renewed commitment. We need those welders back to calm you down. Renewed commitment. That meant, hey, we're doubling down. We're going to keep using Empower. We've had some battles. We've had some struggles, but they've been worth it, and we're going to keep going. We're going to invest a little more time and energy and resources. We have a plan to move it up to 11th grade this next year, and we've communicated that. We're going to continue to work on alignment. And we found this high school in Ohio that the experts recommended to us. We're going to throw a few people in a plane, and we're going to ship them out there, and we're going to learn. We're going to benchmark. We're going to see how to really do this. And so that was model one. Stay the course. Take our punches and keep going. The one in the middle, the rollout reset, was to say, okay, we hear you about Empower. People are struggling with it, so we're going to stop using Empower. But every teacher's now going to use Skyward, and they're going to do traditional or SBG. But we're still rolling forward. We still have our timeline. By 2027, all of our courses would be standards-based grading. Everyone's expected to use proficiency scales, which we told you are so important. You're going to have a scope and sequence, common assessments, and lesson plans that are well-defined. You're going to know what you're teaching and how kids demonstrate success. That's the rollout reset. So Empower goes away in that one, but we stay with an aggressive timeline. Not quite as aggressive as renewed commitment, but we're still moving forward. Reliable range is going to allow some choice. And so this would give some choice and voice for teachers, but that's certainly going to be directed by the administrators at the high school and at the district level. So in this model, imagine we might say ELA, math, science, and social studies, those are all SBG. Maybe some of our electives, maybe some of our CTE courses, maybe some of our college and the high school. We'd get a group of people together to talk about where does it make the most sense and to stay in a traditional model, and where can we really support standards-based instruction and standards-based grading in these other courses. In this model, Empower would go away as well. Everybody would be required to use Skyward. And so this one doesn't have the end date that the other two have. 2027, for each of those two models, we'd be full implementation in the green or the purple. The red says, hey, we're going to move forward where it makes sense. We're going to pull back when it doesn't. We're going to listen to teacher voice in this, but what we won't allow in this model is really important to know. In my 9th grade algebra model, Teacher Gerber doesn't get to use traditional, and I get to use standards-based grading. Whatever the model is for 9th grade algebra, we both have to use that model. So those are the descriptors that we shared with staff, and then they had a chance to ask us questions. So, and we're going to tell you about the results here in a little bit. Miles was like 4 slides ahead of us. But yeah, be thinking in your head what you think the teachers did.
So the next set of slides really gives you the feedback that teachers and staff shared. And we're going to take those kind of theme by theme. And so the first one of those, and Pete kind of talked about it just a second ago, but is that balance between having consistency and having flexibility. Obviously you hear and you saw in all those different lines of the options moving forward, there's a lot of elements about consistency. So like if I take Algebra 9, it doesn't matter which teacher I have, we have common expectations. It's important to differentiate that those common expectations doesn't mean those classes look exactly the same, but it's that we have common markers of what says a student has been successful in algebra or a student hasn't been successful in algebra. So this particular theme had a lot really focused on the need for department-wide consistency rather than individual teacher choice, that it was important that we don't have individual people kind of operating aside from their team. Really pointed out the differences that are needed for some specialty classes like college and the high school, that some of the expectations set out have been challenging in navigating between maybe standards-based grading and college and the high school, and at the same time maintaining dual systems. If you've had a student at Othello High School the last couple of years, you know that some of the courses are graded through Empower and standards-based grading, and some are graded through Skyward and traditional grading. And so the mixed message with that. With that also has created some concerns about equity and confusion. This year in particular, every class within that's offered, every section of a class that's the same class is offered has the same grading mechanism. But a year ago, there were some, for example, there were some English teachers doing it and some not. And so two kids that were taking the same class might have had a very different grading experience based on where they were at. So that's been a forward motion along there. And then just re-emphasizing the department-led decisions are preferred. You know, obviously with this, you know, finding that balance between what things need to be consistent and which things are flexible for some individualism or you know, kind of teacher style is where this theme really sits. The second one is what I would say is the Empower feedback. You heard already that there's a variety of concerns related to Empower. Some users will describe it as complex and unreliable. And generally we hear a lot, and in these themes also supported that Skyward was preferred. Usually because words like simplicity and greater grade transparency, it's really quick and easy to know how a student's doing if you log into Skyward. So it's worth pointing out too that Skyward has been in the district for a number of years, over 20. And so whenever there's something, a tool that people are very comfortable with, there is a time of a growing pain, of change and transition. So it's not surprising necessarily to hear that Skyward is more preferred in that case. It's important to say that there are some positive experiences that people have expressed with Empower. Empower is definitely a tool that is much more efficient and proficient in monitoring student growth over time. And so one of the things that follows a student throughout their educational career is the learning standards that they're working towards. If I'm a student in Algebra 2 at Othello High School, but I took algebra at McFarland Middle School, my Algebra 2 teacher can actually drill down and see the learning targets and standards and how I progress through that time. So it helps unlock learning for the teacher of where students may be. Quite frankly, that's not possible in a traditional Skyward, you know, you could see that they earned a B, but you don't really know, is that B because they can't solve quadratic equations or because they can't simplify expressions? And so the learning progression for students is very powerful for teachers to see. I would tell you too, we haven't fully got there yet because we haven't had a chance to have that longevity over time for people to be able to see that. But some teachers are starting to recognize that already. The automated scoring is probably the most common thing that is that's heard about concern. So Empower has a process where it is generating a predicted score of where the student is performing. All of us are very hardwired to think in percentages and points. And so we, you know, if a student has earned a 2 and a 2 and a 3, our brain naturally tries to add those up and average them. And that's not what the power law is, what Empower uses, but it's really showing a trend line of where that student's headed. And so the best way I can really say that is that when students are, it's kind of like learning to ride a bike. When you can learn to ride a bike, should we still be holding you accountable or marking your progress when you fell off 6 times and scraped your knees? And so that trend line is really, we care more about where you are here than where you were at the beginning of the trimester. And that's just is a huge fundamental shift for people, because in an accountability sense, a lot of our staff are, they're used to being in a place where they know that these assignments I give on day 1, day 2, or day 3 really have just as much voice in a student's grade or progress over the entire trimester. So you're going to hear a little bit later specifically about some things we have as next steps related to Skyward, but those are some things that kind of match out between the Skyward Empower debate, if you will. So.
We have 4 more themes to share. I'm going to take the next 2, and then John will finish up with the last 2. But are there any questions right now?
Yeah, I did want to ask about what you were just saying about seeing the regression. So does that make it difficult for parents and students, like during the semester, to see where their student is at?
Arguably, yes, because where you are today, in our traditional mindset, when we say where we are today, most people want to know, has the student been doing the work that's been assigned of them, and then how are they doing on the work? Those are usually the 2 most common questions. So in a traditional model, you can look for things like zeros or low percentages that kind of indicate that. In a trend line like that, it's possible that at the beginning of the semester you were very low performing, and by the end of the trimester you have met mastery and met standard, which then equates to that A grade, if you will. And so yes, it is difficult, but what we've really tried to do, arguably unsuccessfully, but what we've tried to do is really help people see there are some early indicators of where a student's trend line would start to move in the right direction. So we look for things like growth. We look for things like, yeah, you may be at a 1 today, but over the next couple of weeks, you start to see that growth into the 1.5 level and the 2.0 levels. If you start to see the opposite happening and you're slipping backwards in a particular scale, that's giving you feedback as well that you're really going in the wrong direction. But yes, it's difficult, and I think it's more a matter of just not really thinking of it as a task completion, because that progression isn't saying, you gave me these 10 things to do and I did all 10 of them and I did them well. Instead, it's saying, here's the learning related to this, the progress I've made so far. There is recently a Empower release that makes a tool for parents a little bit easier. McFarland is actually sharing it with their parents this week at parent conferences. That takes a more realistic stab at a grade equivalency, because we know that's a comfortable language for parents to use, is to say, hey, I'm getting about a C. So McFarland is actually releasing that information this week at parent conferences.
Thank you.
The problem. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
With the example of if in Algebra 2 in high school, I can go back and look at the Algebra 1 for middle school, where would we have time in the day or the classroom to do that? And then practically, how would that look? Would it be one-on-ones with each of the students who are struggling in those areas? Or would it be that you have to come after school and, making the teachers stay longer to evaluate, okay, well, back then you did this and you struggled in this area, you're struggling it again here. Like, how would we actually do that and use that? And then also, with the individualizing like that, like picking at each person, how would that affect day-to-day?
So that illustration I used was less probably pointed at the student experience and more pointed at, as the teacher planning for instruction, it's important for me to know my class and to know where their strengths are and what things they've really mastered. So for example, if you're all my 3rd period class and you come and I have data telling me that you've all met proficiency in quadratic equations, I really don't need to spend a lot of time reviewing and reteaching that again, even if it's in my curriculum book. And so it's more of a planning tool at that point. We're still in a mode right now where that algebra class that you took at McFarland, the books are kind of closed on it. Your grade is posted and we've moved on, but it is helpful data for the teacher to know and understand to mark your progress. When we look at that level 5, it's like competency-based learning. That's why that's way out there and aspirational, because that's where it would get really messy to say, okay, you're done with quadratic equations, so now you get to move next door and kind of move on to the next scale or learning progression that's there. And that's a long ways down the road, if we ever aspire to do that.
I do have one example, Miles, for one of your classmates who was in a CTE fiber arts course. They took the first one, and then they had some struggles around some particular standards, but those standards repeated themselves in the next course, the second course. You were talking about A and B?
Fiber arts is 1 and 2.
What's that?
It's like 2, it's 1 trimester, so you can move on to 2.
Yes, so they allowed the student to move on to 2, but then because those standards had another opportunity, that teacher could look back and then give that student credit from the first course who said, oh, now you know it, now you made progress. That's impossible in a traditional Skyward model. So there's some benefits for the student experience that are just a ways down the road. The other thing I want to say about Empower, before we take a couple more questions, When we talked with the national experts around standards-based grading, and this is to acknowledge the work that has happened so far in Othello and the people who have put time and energy into this, when you ask them the best tool to use for standards-based grading, it's Empower. I think that needs to be acknowledged, that we did the best we could with the best tool that's out there, but we need to acknowledge the struggles. But I want you to know it was good, sound decision-making why we went down this road.
What would that look on a transcript? Like, would that you can go back and it would move into an A now, or because when it translates, it would. Okay.
Yeah, everything gets transcripted to a letter grade.
Our state still has a standard transcript. So transcripts in Washington, doesn't matter what high school you graduate from, they all have to look exactly the same.
Yeah.
So how do you collect data from, let's just say, a student who comes in and they're going through, and then all of a sudden they take a 6-week sabbatical, and then at the end of 6 or 7 weeks, they turn all their work, and they get. So what do you do between week 1 and week 6 when they're sitting there doing absolutely nothing?
Are you talking about my kid?
No. I'm just.
Because it sounds pretty familiar.
Well, welcome to the club, sister. That's the problem that I have. And how do you collect data there? Because technically speaking, that kid just is either lazy, doesn't want to do their work, but then at the end, the parent's freaking out, like I imagine so, and you're sitting there and it's just zeros. You're absolutely nothing. But then we allow them on the 6th week to turn in work. It doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't comprehend how we are making them better for that in the real world, and that's the problem that I have with this. Everything else is just fine. It's where's that cutoff? Where's that sweet spot where you're going to sit there and say, okay, at some point, you have to get it done by this deal, because you can ask me. I'm gonna put her on the hot seat. You can ask my wife. And it's to the very end. And then at the very end, she struggles, boom, gets it all done. Well, I don't move to step 2 until step 1 is done. We're very different. How do you figure that, and how do you read data on that?
Yeah, so some of those are going to come out in the themes that are coming up. We had teachers express concern about the late work policy. I know there's been some move already that Principal Atchison has led to shrink that window a little bit. It'd be interesting to hear from the students about not maybe their experiences with the late policy, but maybe what some of their classmates are doing. So I think what came out of our listening session was, hey, 4 weeks might be too long. It's 4 weeks currently. That might be too much. But does 2 weeks seem reasonable? And that would just be a minimum standard. Because again, if Teacher Gerber said, I'm willing to take late work in 4 and 5 weeks if there's some circumstances you're dealing with, he's allowed to do that. But at a minimum, all teachers would use this cutoff. And a lot of them are saying what you're saying, Director Pruneda. Hey, are we teaching kids bad lessons by giving them this lengthy time? So,
and I'll say it another way too. That was never the intended outcome of that whole mindset. Unfortunately, it's morphed into that for some kids. The mentality that I can just kind of show up at the end and drop it all in your lap and measure that. And so there's definitely, and we should expect no different than it comes out as a theme in there, because that's not what that learning progression is really set up to do. And so we do need to figure that out.
And it just, some people learn the system, and like anything else, they play the system. And especially like I worry about like the kids that are in sports. They can sit there and still be eligible to play sports, even though, why? Because they have the 4 weeks to be able to turn in their work. I'm still in that old philosophy that if you don't turn in your work, hey, first it comes your grades and then comes sports. Sports is a maybe a plus to you doing good work, but we lose that when we do this. So that was that's my deal right there.
I think one of my key learnings from the training that we went to is right along the lines of what you just said, and it came out in our conversation when John and I were there for the listening tour. It actually makes that more possible, what you just said, if we stick with standards-based grading. Because what you can then do is you can create, here's my 5 classes, and maybe I have all incompletes right now because I have 6 weeks to hand all that work in. Right next to that, we can lay 21st century skills or work-ready skills or whatever we want to call them, and they could be attendance. They could be getting your work in on time. They could be behavior, whatever categories we decide. So you might have a kid who's passing all their classes, but we know they have 25 missing assignments, and they're always missing first period. And technically, they might be eligible, but we've decided locally that we want to teach you these skills. And if you're an athlete and competing for us, even though you're passing your classes, because you're not behaving the way we think our student citizens should, you're not eligible. And with standards-based grading, you can create this whole other bucket of a grade for a kid around those skills, things that you guys talk about all the time. And we may be able to do that through a different platform, but that was an exciting thing that we heard about to take away, because then you might have another kid who's really struggling with Algebra 2, really struggling with pre-calc, and they don't have a passing grade, and they're not going to be able to play in the next 3 games of a 10-game, so they're going to miss 30% of the season. But that kid shows up every day, comes in for extra help in the morning. The teacher says they're a great kid, they're just struggling. Wouldn't you want that kid to be able to play? Right? There's other ways we can think about it, which is another benefit of having gone down this road with standards-based grading. It's allowing us to think about some of those more creative opportunities, and we just got to find the right platform to do it.
It's also something something I think causes us to rethink some things is we talk a lot about the real world experience of preparing kids for life after high school. And there's no doubt that timeliness is a life skill you have to have. But there's also an element of, there's a whole lot of our world that our kids enter where you don't get the option of doing things like taxes, paying a bill. And so the whole concept, so when the proficiency scales are based on power standards, they're what our staff have declared that every kid who takes algebra at Othello High School needs to do these things. So the question then comes is, why would we knowingly say, here, go on, you're missing these 3 things? But in a traditional grading mindset, things like zeros or skipping an assignment here or there if you're far enough along in that. But we're in kind of that middle ground right now where we're in that transition to really get there. But there needs to be a time and place. So right now our bar is set that you have to have a 1.5 or higher in all of your scales. The scale language around that says something along the lines of 1.5 means I can meet some of the criteria with help from a teacher. Really where that bar should be in a perfect world is that all of those power standards and scales are at the proficiency level. That's what truly marks that you've met the power standards, those things that we've agreed on, this is where you really have to be. But we knew we couldn't go from where we were when we started to all of a sudden saying you have to basically, for lack of better terms, pass everything to be able to move on to the next course.
So like when I told you I'm really old school, I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm about as old as they can come. I'm to the point where you're gonna go to college, you're not gonna have mom and dad trying to wake you up, trying to force you into class. You're not gonna sit there and have, I'm not gonna have somebody pushing me and telling me to go. So at some point, we have to teach these kids that, if you're gonna go on to the next step, it's gonna cost mom and dad and everybody else a bunch of money, but it also, you have to put in your part.
Yep.
And so that's where I feel like right now like I said, Pizza came up with a good idea. I just challenge you guys to, let's see if we can't, push that through.
We're going to press on with the next 2 themes, and I'm sure there'll be more questions to come. I'm glad we paused there for a little bit. So this one was around, and I think you feel it in this room too. There's general support for the philosophy of standards-based grading. It really gets back to what Miles stated, like, all right, how's this work day to day? What's the experience going to be like for students and for teachers? There were some inconsistencies and struggles in a couple of particular areas that were expressed to us, particularly the ELA staff and some of our career and technical ed folks. We talked a little bit about the 1.5 and some rules we put in place that are Othello rules, not necessarily rules of SBG. So thinking about this 3 assignment rule and some of the logistics and how we're actually grading students needs to be discussed and further thought about. And then some more training for staff and agreement around what it means to be a 1.5 versus a 2. Maybe we consider changing the scales, like some nuances and some refinements, I think, is really where we're at with a lot of this work. The next theme was around alignment and making sure that when you think about the foundational areas that we talked about earlier, guaranteed and viable curriculum, effective instruction in every classroom, making sure that the proficiency scales and the assessments and what we're asking kids to do every day is consistent from teacher to teacher. And that the resources that our teachers have and the assignments they're putting in front of kids makes sense. And so there's, when you get a staff together and you ask them how other departments are doing, they certainly will share their opinion, and they did that on this day. And teachers also had a call for administrative support and oversight. They want the principals and assistant principals in their rooms helping them think through this, asking the kinds of things that Miles asked, like, hey, I'm really struggling with this. I've communicated with these parents. They don't understand Empower. I need some help to think about how to communicate really clearly with them where their student's at, or their student's actually doing okay, but mom and dad expect to see A's at every time they log in, and it's not going to show that for another couple weeks. So there was a call for some additional support from the admin team from our teachers.
Theme 5, we also call this the Director Perneda slide. So these were really looking at some of the concerns around students disengaging. And that could be really on both ends. That could be, I got a 1.5, I'm passing the course, I'm done. I'm just gonna coast through the rest. Or it could be that they achieve a 3, and that's early in the trimester, and say, hey, that's an A, that's good. You know, I'm not gonna push myself for a 4. And so just the challenge there around students disengaging, that was one concern that came up. Another was around the late work policy. And I know it has been tightened down a little bit this year to a 4-week window. Some of the teachers suggested maybe a 2-week. It was interesting where, you know, you may have had some in years past who are like, no, this is when it's due, done, no excuses. And we really didn't hear that. I think there has been some growth in the thinking around that. But can we make it so it's a shorter window? One, so we teach responsibility for turning in assignments in a timely manner. But also so that it's not the workload on the teacher, that all of a sudden on week 6, they just have hundreds of papers that they need to be scoring and correcting and entering because everybody procrastinated. So then another concern was just the kind of a broader issue around mediocrity or a lack of rigor for that. And then the desire for behavioral expectations and accountability for performance. So like those 21st century skills that we want our students to have, we recognize that it shouldn't like influence what you know about algebra or your English grade, your behavior, but is there some way to track it? Is there some way to measure it? Is there some way that there can be accountability for it? And so those were the pieces around there. In theme 6, it was around the communication piece, or the breakdown in communication, both with parents and with students. So we had talked about initially knowing that there was some confusion around parents and where are they really at in the class, and are they really doing okay? And my kid says they're doing okay, they're on track, but you know, not a lot of confidence around that. And so what can we do to address that? The need for clarity around athletic eligibility. Pete just shared one idea or one model around that if we stayed with standards-based grading, could there be other factors that, you know, we clearly communicate this is the expectation of a student and athletic eligibility, and use some of those factors would be an idea. Another concern that came up was just inadequate tools for timely communication. So Dr. Meek talked about Skyward. We know those, I don't know if students liked them or not, but like those weekly or every other week progress reports that would get sent home, right, in an email, and grade checks and those sort of piece. That's kind of lacking right now. And so a need to address that sort of piece. And that ties into the last bullet there with the advisory. So if I'm an advisory teacher, one of my responsibilities that I take on is to help the students with, hey, where are you struggling in your math class or your English class or whatever. They open up Empower and they can't tell. Like they don't have clarity about where the student is at. And so it makes it difficult for them to assist them in a meaningful way. And so those were the last 2 themes. But before we move on to the close here, are there any questions?
Yeah, just 2 slides left. So any questions before we reveal?
What was the original intention with 6-week deadline?
So the original intention wasn't anything to do with a deadline. It was that kind of that, when I use the example of, you know, if we say solving quadratic equations is a skill you have to have, that we need to somehow develop a mechanism that holds you accountable for that. So it doesn't matter if you turn it into, in this case, it doesn't matter if you turn it in today or if you turn it in next week. It's still important that we see that you can solve quadratic equations. What we've learned about human behavior is that no matter where you set that bar, there are certain percentage of people who will always go here or even after that. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 week or 2 weeks or 6 weeks. There's always going to be people who push it right up against there to say. So the intent was that it was about ensuring that students had the skills and standards necessary, and not just saying, oh, our time's up, we're moving on, you can't solve quadratic equations, better luck in your next educational experience. Does that make sense? I can see it, the wheels turning there, so.
I know a student.
Thank you, yeah.
I know a student that, for example, had a non-standards based graded class that was a college in the classroom class where they worked really diligently to get an A, and then in their standards based grading class, because it was in, you know, English, math, science, where they take it all year, got an incomplete and was like, no big deal, I have all year, like not a problem. That makes me crazy. That's my child, but the capability is there for the straight A's, and it's like where there's high expectation, she will rise to the occasion. But when the expectation is you got time, then she's taken all the time that there is.
Yeah.
And it has made her, I call it a lazy learner, because there's no, I don't know, there's no pressure that, like, you have a deadline of this trimester ends on this day, and then it is done. It's like, even from trimester 2, there's still a chance to go back to trimester 2, even though we're almost to the end of trimester 3, to make amends for mistakes made in trimester 2. And at this point, I'm grateful for that, because she's let it go this long. But where there is the rigor required for college in the classroom of, like, you have deadlines and this is what this actually looks like, then, you know, I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but
Piggybacking off of that, I actually really want to touch on that. The kids who we made this for, the ones who try a lot, and it's still just not clicking. When I'm, for at least me, and I've 100% done that. I'm the lazy learner too. Like 100% I've done that. Probably every year I've been in high school.
Not good.
Not good. No. It does bite you, but you can get away with it. When we make the system in place for the little, I'd say that it's a much smaller group of those people who struggle, but the people who don't, it creates this big room. That was my big opposition to standard-based grading, that we did make it so we can seek out those kids who are struggling, who Algebra 2, after so long, after 2 trimesters, still, maybe it took them all 3 trimesters to get it, and then you can, change the grade. What is it, retroactively? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Right. But I think catering to that small group is making a bigger harm when it's allowing me to do as I please and still make it, and then I can do that same thing of, even if it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, that I can just dump all the work at the very end. And even with the standard base, isn't it to where you can't move on to 2 until you've done X amount of 1.5s, or is it now all open? Because I remember when you originally started, it was like that, where the teachers had to distribute two work of 2. Then they have to give you level 3 work, level 4 work, et cetera, et cetera. So you really could coast. Like, okay, in summary, why is this a net benefit for everybody and not just that little group? And then how much should we put in for that little group? And then at what cost? Like,
yeah, I think one of a challenge I would make to part of your premise is your assertion that us setting at this 6-week window is just for those students who might be struggling, and that allows you to build these bad habits and be a lazy learner. I think another way to look at that is if the only way you respond and become an active learner is if you have this fear of consequence that you're not going to get to hand it in and chase points. There's a lot of harm in that as well, because we have a system of kids just chasing assignments and making sure they have enough points at the end. And this, we're calling this standards-based grading, but it really was about standards-based learning. What are the most important things that a kid needs to know in every course, and how do they demonstrate that they know that, whether it's in week 2 or in week 8? That's the idea behind the 6-week window, right? You learn the most important things. So it requires that teachers are really clear, that principals are really clear, that the school district's really clear on what we want kids to learn. But we didn't set this up for those kids. We set it up for all kids. Because when you can do it effectively and you have the right resources and tools and enough training, and I wouldn't say we've checked the box on any of those, it really is a better model for kids. It really is.
And I honestly, like I said, the fear for me was what he just explained, is if we are really getting them ready for college and we put them in that, and if they get that bad habit, in college, nobody's gonna sit there and give you more than your 4 or 5 days to turn in your work. And then you fail. There is no coming back and, hey, let me turn in something. I am a big deal of, if you're gonna train somebody here, it's to get them here. I don't wanna get them here and then all of a sudden fail them, because the next step for them is college and we're not getting them ready. I always tell them, I don't want OHS to be making sheep. I wanna make goals. And that's my deal with that. And if you have a system where you can change that, I'm okay. Because like I said, it's a work in progress. We went from 6 to 2. I just want to make sure that the kids that need that extra time to learn the standard, we get it. But kids that can blow by the first 2 and 3 parts of it, that we're still challenging them. Or that we're setting some type of deal to motivate them to do something, which I know it might be difficult, but it's what we need. In the fear of not having something is also my goal. I have a goal. I have something to accomplish. I need to have this, and it's not a fear, it's a goal. You set up every morning to come to work and make this a better school for your kids. That's your goal. Same thing with the kids. It's not an assignment, it's a goal. We got to somehow make them better.
Yeah.
One of the places we might have gotten off track a little bit in the, when we talk about 2 weeks or 6 weeks, is when you go back, and I'm going to answer your question another way too. What a true standards referenced reporting would say is that if we're a class and we did this lab today and it's a level 3 task that I've asked you to do and you don't do it, tomorrow we don't just keep recycling through that same thing. But now your responsibility as a learner is to show me that you can perform at a 3.0 level with some other work and other tasks. We're not there yet, because you can imagine the amount of creativity that would take, the student agency in their learning they would have to say, yeah, I blew off that lab. Because I don't disagree with you that we potentially are creating bad habits in people that think they have an unlimited amount of time just to do whatever. But the point is, you can't just blow off your learning on that. And in a zero mindset, you get to. And for some of them, depending on how the assignment's weighted, you could do that with a whole lot of really important things and still get a decent grade out of a class.
One thing that didn't come out directly in the listening tour, but I think was when Pete and I went to the training in Colorado, they talked about the level 4. And we've talked a lot about 1, 2, and 3, but there is that level 4, and that's that application, right? How do you take your learning and say, what does that look like? We just saw the application with those 3 young men here, and the other, I think there were 8 total with that welding. Like, that was something where they took a skill in that class, and they said, now I'm going to take it further. I'm going to do something that's going to better my opportunities going forward. And that's really where, as a system, we haven't arrived there yet, but it's that ability to say, wow, Miles, you're at a 3. Let's challenge you. Let's get you to a better spot, right? And some of that work as well. Just to be fair, though, to not defending standards-based grading per se, but the idea of sort of gaming the system has been around for a long time. I was in a college class, and they said, you can average all of your assignments and all of your test scores, and that'll be your grade. Or whatever your final is, if it's higher, then we'll take that. And I said, fantastic, I'm never going to class, right? I knew that I was going to ace that final. and I did not, right? And the second time I took it, I took a different approach, right? But the whole idea around like finding sort of those loopholes, like that's been around a long time. And that's been around in traditional grading as well. But we do want to address, that's not to minimize the concerns that we have with standards-based grading, but just to keep that in mind as well.
One more thing, and I'm done after this, I promise. The kind of the thing of the fear of the score, the fear of the zero, and how we shouldn't. I like what he said. It's a goal, not necessarily that we're just working to catch the grade. I also want to ask, like, how much is it that you guys are wanting my education more than me, and then how much are we going to spend on that? Because, Rocha put it beautifully. I can't want it more than you. I cannot want it more than you. The kids cannot have the teachers wanting them to get the education, and it's holding everyone else back when the teacher's taking time to care for me more than I care.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful arguing with the 17-year-old, but I couldn't disagree more with what you said. I think to assume that every teacher is doing all they can for every student in a traditional model and just moving along when kids get zeros, and it's one thing to say 4 to 6 weeks is too much time. If we've reached out through every platform we have to communicate with parents and to give the family and the kid feedback. As superintendent, I can't guarantee that that's occurring at a high enough level to feel good about it. And the other thing about being college ready and career ready for you, Miles, and for Director Pruneda, some of what you've shared is, I believe as we encourage and train and support teachers to get more clear about what they're teaching, we're actually preparing you better for college. You might think we're making you lazy and giving you all these false ideas about, well, I can do whatever I want, and then when I get there, I'm on my own. But the experience that we're trying to design for you to have in class, to do 6 things really well, as opposed to 60 assignments that are all worth 10 points and you get to get an A, you're going to be more successful at the University of Washington if you know those 6 core ideas at a deep level than the 60 assignments you filled out just to get an A on your transcript. So I don't accept that it's because we want it more for kids. We want a better experience for kids so that when they go there, they're more prepared. They make better decisions. And so this is an exercise in not only training them up for the skills and how they don't become lazy learners, but also creating rich experiences that prepare them when they get there. Because you can not be lazy and show up at a university, but your Algebra 2 experience was so poor and lacked clarity and consistency that your first math class you fail. Now you're in big trouble. Now you're paying for classes that you're not getting credit for. Now you take remedial courses and the likelihood of you graduating drops dramatically. So this is, I just want to make sure that this was always about creating better experiences and more success for more kids. It wasn't some wild idea just to do something innovative and creative. It really is about chasing something that I think is better. And that means it's hard. That means it's difficult. And we've made some errors along the way. And so we want to share with you what the teachers said about it. And so we gave them these 3 options, and here's what they told us. 25% said, keep going. You just push on. Another 25% said, hey, let's think about this and let's stop using Empower. What does that leave? Don't put it up, John. Miles?
50.
Nice job, Miles. It only took you 6 seconds, not 6 weeks. 50%. 50% got it. And so here's where we're at. We're trying to figure out what that tells us. What I appreciate about tonight is the passion and the energy that you all speak with it. And there were a few people like that in our sessions, but it was measured. It was people sharing, like, we believe in some of these ideas. We're not sure how we do it day to day. We need some support around that. So we're not done yet. Today isn't the end of it. The next slide is, here's what we're going to do next. Dr. Meek and I are meeting with 2 teachers, one from the middle school and high school, I think tomorrow or Wednesday. And we're gonna look at Skyward for standards-based grading. And we're gonna they're Empower users and have some expertise around Empower. And we want them to say, imagine you're test driving 2 different vehicles. And so you drive one and then drive the other. We're gonna spend a few hours that day driving Skyward and Empower with them to say, do you think SBG would work in the Skyward model? So that's our really most immediate step that's coming. We're going to go back with Kat and her team at the high school and talk about option 3, which you saw up there had the most energy around it, and talk with the leadership team there about what that might mean for them. And so that's the way, if we had to say tonight, what are we doing? We're leaning that direction. But we want a little bit more information before we lock it in. We're going to talk with our athletic department about redesigning the eligibility process to get at what some of Director Pruneda has shared and Director Prowse about making sure we don't create bad habits in kids and still allow them some of these cool extracurricular opportunities. And then we're just going to keep training whatever model we land on to be more consistent in our scope and sequence and common assessments and lesson planning. But so we got good data, we got good information. It's going to inform our next step. At the next board meeting, you'll hear from us again. Here's where we're at, here's how the training went, here's what we heard from the school, and here's what we're going. And I joke with Miles a little bit, and we've been sort of bantering back and forth, all of us. I want you to know that we're listening to all of it. We really listened to all the teachers on that day. We're continuing to take your feedback. We'll get more feedback around Skyward and Empower to try and make the best decisions for students primarily, but also for our teachers who are wrestling with this every day. So those are our next steps.
I just want to say, it might feel like I've been kind of hard on the subject tonight, or that some of us have been, but I know we really believe in standards-based teaching. We really believe in standards-based learning. It's the grading portion that throws parents for a little bit of a loop. I'm speaking just from my own personal experience. But I really appreciate the thinking outside of the box about standards-based teaching and how can we get our teachers to understand what it is that they're teaching so that their students can understand what they're supposed to be learning. So I appreciate you guys, kind of maybe taking some shots from the board tonight. That certainly wasn't my intention, but we're passionate, just as you are, for our kids to get the best outcomes. And so I appreciate you guys presenting tonight and continuing on doing your best and trying for better solutions when maybe, one door closes, another window opens. So thank you for all of your help and for the continued progress.
I'm the loudmouth, so I take it as criticism, and it's to make it better. I think you guys are working at something, but if we don't challenge you guys, it's like the kids. If you don't challenge you guys, then you guys don't come up with something better. I know Pete challenges you guys already enough. For us who aren't teachers, we try to challenge you guys as parents and as what we see in our kids and what we feel like when we get home, we stress out because we get on there and they're zeros and you're failing. And then, no, Dad, I got 6 weeks. Like Pete said here a minute ago, thank you for answering in 6 seconds and not 6 weeks. Thank you. But it
was a level 1 level task, though. I'm just
and you aced it. But no, I appreciate you guys coming out, and we look forward to you guys coming and giving us updates on this, because it's been something that I know since last year there's been a lot of back and forth, and so we appreciate you guys. Like I said, and it's never to be against something. It's just to help us understand as well, because we were brought up with regular A, B, C, D. So
were we.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. I don't mean to be rude or anything else. So yeah, I like to work it out. So I'll see all the pieces and parts.
Well, thank you all for that and the opportunity to talk about our next steps and where we're headed. For the next portion of the meeting, we have an update from Principal Kat Atchison, from Josh Tovar from Desert Oasis, and we're going to talk a little bit about graduation, and then we're going to launch into the DOHS presentation. So you'll be happy to know that we don't have a PowerPoint for you around graduation. I've invited them, though, because I know the board gets questions from the community, and you have your own questions. So we're hoping that someone would kick it off with a question for Josh or for Kat about graduation.
Colored robes, what color, what's going on?
Yeah.
So This year, our students will be wearing black gowns with a red sash, and we're looking at having that be maintained for the remainder of graduations moving forward. In a sense, too, as we merge and integrate DOHS, it's also to be able to recognize, just have everyone there as a sense of unity, but also because we will, if we have one graduation ceremony, and in the future, we would also be including our Open Doors program and everybody. So it's just this is OSD and our graduation. So that's the reasoning behind the one graduation gown color rather than having the two. I know Miles is consistently having conversations with me, trying to get me to allow the two colors, but that's kind of the reasoning behind making the shift to one color.
This applies to the DOHS too. They'll be wearing the black and red, or
Yes.
So for this current one too, they'll graduate. So say if they graduate separate from OHS, they'll still be all in all black? Oh, okay, they'll do their navy. Right.
In the past, girls have worn red and the boys have worn black, and we're switching to all black. Okay, wanted to clarify.
And I think at DOHS, the experience would have been they would all have been in blue. All the students were one color. In our analysis of the region, of all the high schools we spoke to, they're all single color except for Quincy, I believe. And Quincy doesn't do it by male, female. They do it by, you can wear either green or yellow, you pick. So, I mean, there are some options and things we could consider moving forward, but it really was and it's something we've talked about for a couple years, and it seems every year that it got missed or we didn't connect with Jostens in a timely way, and this is a year where CAP put some systems in place and said, okay, this is what we're doing.
And you want this going forward. I'm trying to get behind that. It just, OHS colors is a black and red, and so we've always been just accustomed to that, and obviously not always, traditions or whatever, but.
Another reason for the shift is because we've had a lot of families who they have a male, a son who graduates, and then they need to then rebuy a red gown. And so by just making the shift to a black gown, it can be reused over and over again so that parents don't have to also provide, additional money to get a new gown, because that can be an additional expense.
I wanted to ask about feedback from parents in the community. Obviously, graduation is a really important event for the parents in the community. Can you share with us some of the feedback we got about last year's graduation and the changes we've made for this year according to that?
Overall, it was fine. Good feedback from parents. We did debrief with a team of people. There were some challenges when it came to the wristbands last year with the VIP and which gate they were supposed to go to. So one of the things we're doing this year, because of the class size, everyone needs to have a wristband coming in, and everyone's only going to get 10 tickets. So there'll be 5 for family members to sit close to the stage, in the grass area, and then they'll get another 5 to be able to sit up in the stands. And so people won't be able to get in without a wristband to the ceremony. And we're trying to do a little bit more crowd control when it comes to where people are needing to navigate.
I was just going to say around crowd control, we struggled last year with folks, I guess, holding people accountable or having the courage to say, hey, you're not supposed to sit there. It was a transition for everyone. So we have a plan with our own staff, but also security agency that we contract with that's coming in. Another hang up last year around flow and efficiency was getting people in a timely manner. So we moved up not our start time, but our gate entry up about half an hour. And then the company that we contracted with, our event was the first one where they had used the metal detectors and wands. They've now had a year to get used to that equipment, and so they've commented to us that they'll be much more efficient getting people in and out.
Well, the comment of the one colored gown was made to parents or no?
With like now things we don't pay for like ASB cards and stuff like that, what's stopping us from just allowing them to get a waiver for the gown?
We do work
To
with
that meeting,
families if we know of a need. There is a separate pot of money so we can purchase a gown if needed for a family. But we're seeing an increase in the need of families not able to purchase a gown.
Kat, at some time, could you please give me the number that might be, just out of curiosity?
Mhm.
I'd like to see what that number would be.
Okay.
Could I ask a question of the group? And what's the concern about one color?
Ugly. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, that was. I've heard. This is not me. Funeral, lame. It's all one big blob. We don't know who's who. It's harder to identify your kid if you're trying to take a video photo. It's a little bit of it, but yeah, it's more just a little bit of diversity. Also, it's our school colors that it's, you know, we're more red than black to begin with like every other thing. So it just kind of seems, and also like they're hot. Some girls say that it's not flattering to wear black.
Yeah, I know some of the comments around sort of diversity of look and appearance and whatnot. I thought that was addressed in the last couple of years with the sort of allowing folks to adorn their caps and to dress those up and to allow some of that personality. So I guess it's a balance between like aesthetics and what people think looks good. And so we'll try it this year and see how it looks and then decide how big of an issue and concern it was. I think the primary issues we heard last year weren't about gown colors or robe colors is probably a more appropriate term. It was, can we get in and out? Are there seats available? Those kind of things. But
I don't think there was an issue getting out. I think we pretty much stayed to the very, was there an issue?
No, that
I
was
was gonna say-
actually positive feedback that we got from everybody from the way that we had students go out for families to be able to greet. So that was a positive. It was getting people in and the new protocols around going through a detector, getting wand, all of that type of stuff, and having the VIP, the bracelets. That was another one of our challenges in getting people in the right spots. So those were the challenges, but as far as like the end of the ceremony and meeting up, that wasn't a concern.
I was going to sit there and say for me, it was my first graduation as a board member. And yeah, I would have said maybe that at the beginning, you know, when everybody kind of stood behind the kids in the bleachers and everything else, I thought that was most of our issue. But there was where we got really close to starting and there were still quite a bit of people outside. And but otherwise, I think everything else after that was amazing. I applaud you guys. I'm kind of excited to see this year because there's even more kids.
Yep.
But I think for the most experience, it was a great experience. At least, and I didn't even graduate. But for me, as a first-time board member, it was exciting. It was good. So.
Yeah, a positive thing from the kids too. I like that everyone moved around the track like that. That was nice.
I don't have an opinion about the gown color. I was just curious if that was like a decision that just the administration made, or if you guys took into student voice into that consideration.
We didn't ask the students. We needed to, with the timing of everything, we need to get the gown color and everything to Jostens, and it was all colliding at one time with prepping for last year's graduation and this year's. And so I want to say juniors are getting a presentation this week to start prepping them for their grad ceremony for next year. So there's just trying to figure out the proper timeline with Jostens to coordinate colors. But I know Miles has been working on trying to get more feedback from kids because he would like to have 2 colors for their graduation.
I do want to share sort of a little bit of history around graduation at Othello High School. The color decision, if it did include student voice, was actually made 3 or 4 years ago. Just never got implemented. I think maybe it was even pre-COVID where we said we're going one gown color like they do at DOHS, and which we've done for years, and it just never happened. And this year it finally happened. So that I don't want to say that we didn't include student voice. We might not have asked this year's class, but we did previously. And the other thing is we control the parts of that ceremony because it is ceremonial. There's some meaning to the components that kids wear because we often get the idea, well, I want to wear a flag or I want to wear this kind of sash. So all of those components about the school district controlling the appearance of that event. This is just really consistent with that. It might not be a decision that that some students like, and you might generate some energy around that, and we'll have to consider what we do. But I do want to say that the movement for some individuality and design for students came when they addressed the idea with the hats, and that's pretty common in, you go to college graduation, that's what you're gonna see. One gown color, they're all wearing, they have the moments on their hoods, those kinds of things. So it really is not that unusual. It's a change for us, but it's sort of like the athletic one I described earlier. We're getting in alignment with everyone around us.
Do we have to be like everyone around us? You know, I want to be cool. I want to be the standout. Because then what if we do it and then everyone's like, oh, they have 2 colors. Yeah, let's do that. You know?
Well, I guess you're in the junior class, so you guys will have to use your voice when you're ready. Does anyone have any other questions around graduation?
Last year the sun was kind of in our eyes. If you could reposition the sun, that would be good. That would be great.
Oh, I have a question. So for DOHS graduating students for next year, how do I say it? So like, you know, you just want us to stick to one color, which is black. How does, and for the DOHS kids, how does that make them feel like you said, like in unity, like in one? When it would probably be the same if it was also black and red. Like, wouldn't they just still feel like it's still OHS? Like, how does one color make them feel like in unity? Like black.
I think it's just one of the factors that Mrs. Atchison shared. So it's the expense for families, it's the consistency with Jostens, it's the being able to hand those components down. It's a number of factors I think to be considered. So I don't think it's just around that. But when you look at any sort of team, right, they all wear the same color. They all have the same thing on. And again, I've been to lots of graduations in the last 5 years at different colleges and universities and high school, and it really is pretty consistent that that's the experience. Would you prefer they were all red?
I like the diversity. I like that there's 2. The all red. Yeah, it would kind of do the same thing of, well, my main point was that there is lack of difference, that it would all just be one blob. And I guess that we're all unified in the blob, but I think we're also unified by our school colors. Sorry.
I really like this kid just because he brings energy. I just going to say that. We'll put that in the board meeting docs right there on the bottom.
Okay, I'm all done, I promise.
Do you guys have any more questions?
Question, but not about this. Can we get a, like this of this first slide we had, the slideshow with the center base? Thank you.
Would you like it black and white or color?
2 color, please, red and black for Miles.
You gotta love our board meetings. This is amazing.
Well, it's I appreciate the questions and conversation around graduation. It certainly is a milestone in American culture. It is a big deal. I don't mean to make light of it. And, you know, we pray for good weather, and then it's going to be a nice, safe event to recognize the class of 2025. Pretty cool. So with that, I think we're going to turn it over to the next chunk, which is the DOH. Oh, we had another question?
No question. It just, was Marisa going to ask if we're all going to be there, or do you need to know?
I think we did that at the beginning. It sounds like you're all going to be there, and we're going to, last year, for those of you who handed out diplomas, and you remember that Assistant Superintendent Shank and I were handing you the diplomas to hand out. What we'll do this year is we'll have 2 board members handing the diplomas to the students, 2 board members supplying the diplomas, and then about midway through, we'll switch, and you can each have that experience. So it'll work well with 4 board members.
Unless Sharon decides to come on.
Would 4 board members like robes for the evening?
And what color?
Or if you call it a gown, then yeah.
Yeah, all right, we'll work
Just
on
kidding.
that.
Do you want us to do that?
You know, it's really your choice. Just wanted to make,
Only if
give
I get a
you,
red robe.
give you options, all right.
I'm just kidding. Totally kidding.
Now I think we're at the moment for the DOHS presentation and Principal Tovar, and I think Principal Atchison is going to be there alongside of him. That's certainly this partnership that we've been developing and fostering as we move to integrating both high schools.
All right, thank you and good evening, everybody. When we took the mic, they gave us 5 to 4 minutes to present. We've exceeded that time, so we'll try to go as fast as we can. I debated, I don't like sitting when I present, but I debated when to do this, and I think I'm just going to do it right off the top. And what I want to do is I want to take this opportunity really quick. Number one, I want to thank my staff, and I want to also thank my team that's here right now. Currently here we have Ms. Tovar, Mrs. Pernetta, and Mrs. Alvarado, but I have an entire staff, and the reason why I want to thank them, and I want to thank our Othello School District staff, parents, and board members over the past years. I've been an administrator for 15 years, and I cannot take credit for ALPS or Desert Oasis High School, the names and what it's meant to our community. This is, as I was sitting listening to the exciting standards-based grading presenters and topics and debate, I was just thinking about, man, this is it. Like, this is our last presentation for Desert Oasis High School. And I have the privilege of being the principal at this school. So I want to thank everyone that came before me, administrators and staff members, as well as, like I said, OSD staff, for the opportunity to give kids in our community that are now adults in our community that graduated at one point or another from Desert Oasis High School, whether it was called Desert Oasis or it was called ALPS. Again, the school has meant a lot to our community. And it's done a lot for our community. And one of the biggest things that it's done is, we're going to be talking about it, but it's the resources that it's brought to our attention that we find are absolutely necessary at Othello High School. I am an Othello High School graduate. ALPS was around when I was in school, and you guys weren't even born yet. But again, one thing I'll ask you to consider when you do consider colors of gown is think of safety issues as well, because there are kids that won't wear certain colors, and then it goes way beyond what some of you guys might even think, which has to do with safety issues as well. So I'm actually for one color, just be careful of the particular colors. So again, thank you, the Othello community, for allowing Desert Oasis High School to be a part of this community. So we'll get this going really quick. So again, what our objective today is basically, we're going to give you guys an update. I know we did that last week, but we're going to go in a little bit of different style, but a lot of the same. And I know Miles wasn't there, and judging from how much he contributes, man, that was your MVP that you guys failed to bring to the table. So I like challenges. So anything you have for us to think about, Miles, shoot, we're ready. Our goal, obviously, guys, at Othello High School is to ensure that students and staff, that they feel valued, they feel known, and they feel supported in all the work that we do at all times. All right, so we're going to focus on 4 different areas next year, and this is where we've already started to do this. And you'll hear me say they, us. It's basically us, but we want to focus on the culture and the caring. We've heard a lot of information, whether it's through surveys, whether it's through specifically like the CEE survey, or just our staff telling us in general what we need, but focus on students, social emotional learning, where are they at? Focus on our staff members as well. Systems of support, which basically has to do with like monitoring how students are doing so that we can intervene sooner rather than later. Communication is, no matter what we do, whether it's picking the colors of the gowns, communicate with those parties involved, whether it's students, staff, stakeholders. They need to know what we're doing, and this is kind of what we're doing here publicly regarding the transition and where we're at. Technical structure just has to do with some of the pieces that we have to consider, and I know there's a lot of moving pieces in regards to the facilities that we currently have and how we're going to use them for next year. And we'll talk a little bit about all of that. But first, the game plan for Desert Oasis High School students, 26 credits to graduate is what we currently have. We're going to continue that, so anyone that was at Desert Oasis High School, they will be grandfathered in. We're going to bypass the second one because we're not able to ensure that all Desert Oasis High School students are going to have a Desert Oasis current staff member because of different staff needs that we've had to meet. But we're going to continue to offer support from our counselor, Mrs. Tovar, as well as myself and Mrs. Pernetta. will not also be at the, will not be at the high school next year either. But for sure, they'll at least see some familiar faces, but specifically in the office with Mrs. Tovar as well as myself. For focus core classes, you'll hear a little bit about how we plan to do that. But there's a need for not just Desert Oasis High School students, but all students who just need extra attention, maybe extra interventions, different learning strategies. But there's going to be focus classes for all high school students in their core areas in order for them to be successful. So we're going to focus intentionally with some supports that you're going to hear a lot today called hub services, and we'll elaborate on what that is shortly. But in the past, whenever we've had issues or we've noticed that there's needs, we just try to basically throw all types of resources at the problem. And sometimes we hit the target, and sometimes we don't. This is one visual, but the other visual is basically trying to throw 100 arrows at one particular target and not doing anything correctly, not even hitting one particular target. So we want to go from that to aligning our services for this next year. I apologize. Maybe better alignment. So identify what the need is, and then how are we going to address those needs? What types of supports are we going to put in place? And you're going to hear a lot about the success team and the hub team and how we're going to basically work together to make sure that our staff, it says teachers, but it's basically all of our staff, and you'll hear who some of those staff members are going to align our services to meet the needs of our students. So here's kind of where we're at right now with teachers and students. I'm gonna hand this over to Mrs. Atchison, who had the opportunity to go to Sunnyside, and I'm gonna let you guys know what she learned from when we went to Sunnyside High School.
So I presented at the beginning of the year around our datas and the buckets that we're doing to monitor kids' progress around achievement, behavior, as well as attendance, I think is the other one. And learned that this process we're going through when Josh and I talk about the success team, Sunnyside has been doing this, and it's been a 10 to 15 year process. And so we went in February and took our counselors and most of my admin team there and learned about the culture at Sunnyside. They have a strong sense of community, and they all make the data visible. And so this past year, the admin team and we've been onboarding Josh as to how we're tracking our data and how do we make this more visible into next year, so that everybody's aware of where our kids stand when it comes to achievement, behavior, as well as the attendance. And students, there's a positive student relationship with their teachers. We did classroom walks, and there were teachers that were on prep that went into another classroom and was offering support once or twice a week, just because that's the culture that Sunnyside High School has developed and created. The kids talk about CBE very clearly, and that stands for Connect, Build, and Envision, and creating a sense of belonging, self-worth, and helping them have hope and envision what their future is going to look like. And so we learned a lot from that, and Josh unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but we are going back May 8th. We're going to take some students with us as well, so we can start having a dialogue with our students about how they can help us connect and improve the culture at OHS, so that when we welcome our DOHS students back, as well as address some concerns that I listened to today from some of our executive team members who held a student panel, we can start planning what does the first 45 days of school look like, so that we can set everybody up for success and everyone knows how they can earn incentives. And so that's kind of what we learned from Sunnyside and some next steps that are gonna happen, because we can't do this work without our counselors, without our teachers, without our students' input, so that we can start changing the culture and create a culture of learning at OHS.
So changing the culture brings us to this slide, relational trust. What we've learned through the work with a consultant by the name of Dr. Chuck Salinas out of Gonzaga is this got to be the foundation, relational trust with our students and our staff. Academic press is also listed as well as supports, but I think that at the end of the day, it's all about relationships and how we treat our staff, how we treat our students, and then how they treat each other as well. So Our ultimate goal is you're going to hear, and you're going to probably be hearing more even into next year, is like about different buckets and the different colors. And I talked to you guys at the board meeting. Obviously, one of the things that we know across cultures is that green means go, green means good, yellow is like, okay, we might have some concerns here, and red usually means danger, stop. We're going to focus on 3 different areas: attendance, behavior, and academics. And what we want to look forward to is students being at a level where you walk down the hallway and students know that maybe they're in green in a certain area, but they also know that they're yellow in another area. Students that are red that doesn't mean we're going to walk around with billboards that say, hey, I'm red in attendance, but at the same time, just like kids know what their GPAs are, or they know what their grades are, we also want them to know where they're at. Our ultimate goal is keeping kids in the green area. The colors is just kind of how we talk about it as staff, because we need to know which kids do we need to pay more attention to. How are we going to do this? Again, alignment of our services. We're bringing more services and resources to the table. We are in the process of I would use the word allocating what these services are going to look like. So knowing where our kids are at and knowing what our kids need. In order to know what Miles needs or any of our other students at Othello High School, we need to know these kids. We need to know what their struggles are. Because yes, you can see their transcript. You can pull it up at any given time and see what their grades are. But do you really know what the kids' needs are? Do you really know what happened to them this past weekend? Do you really know where they live? And just because you know their address doesn't mean you really know where they live, right? So once we get to a point where we understand these students who are maybe in yellow, maybe in red, we get to offer the services that we truly need. So there's going to be a success team that's going to be meeting together, and I'm going to show you some of those members, and we're going to address these needs. Again, we're not just focusing on the red kids. We are also focusing on the green kids, but again, our ultimate goal is if we can get everybody to a level where everyone's proficient, we're going to be just way more successful as a school system. We've set up some parameters, some metrics on how we're going to look at behavior and academics and attendance. I'm not going to get into this, but this is how we're basically placing kids into these buckets and these color meanings, right? One of the things that we're doing is with the Othello High School staff, we've put things into place. For example, who's our success team going to be? Our counselors for 25-26 school year is going to be 2 by grade levels, 3 by alpha. So again, we understand that Mrs. Simmons recently announced that she's going to be retiring, so we will probably be opening up for another counselor at the high school. So they're going to be divided in the best way that the team feels, right? So currently, 2 are going to be assigned by grade levels, and 3 of them are going to be by alpha, kind of like what you're used to right now. So depending on what your last name is, that's who your counselor will be. Administrators are going to be assigned as specified here. So for example, they've given me the privilege of dealing with attendance. This is a national crisis problem, but yet I'm going to solve this problem. Not. But anyways, that's going to be my issue, and that's because I deal a lot with attendance, and I believe I've seen Miles in court. Not for truancy issues, but just as an observer, just to clarify. He was shadowing the judge. Yeah, that's what he was doing. Just for the record, Miles, Dr. Perez has been there a few times too. Just shadowing me. Behavior, Mrs. Dr. Perez wants to say something.
I just wondered what color robe the judge was wearing.
Black. Mrs. Dunn will take over behavior, and Mr. Spencer will be in charge of academics. Mr. Schwartz will continue leading the work with the 9th grade freshman pack. So again, these are just our assigned areas, so we can be laser focused on the work that we're doing. Our success team is going to consist of, these are people that are going to meet on a weekly basis to talk about our students, where they're at, and who's in need, who needs intervention. So we'll have counselors, administrators. SAP stands for Student Assistant Professionals from the ESD, which is Mr. Vega. School psychologists, it's all going to be about looking at the data, their buckets, and where they're at. What do we need to do before 6 weeks have gone by? It's too late to help and intervene. Something comes up in our community, someone lost a home. What do we need to do to help these kids? Because they're going to go through some times of needs, right? And we see this all the time in our community. Question.
So this is school-wide. This isn't just for DOHS students
coming
in?
Yeah, no. DOHS, that will always be in our memory. We're not going to be using that. It's school-wide. It's Othello High School students. Because when I hear things like DOHS and bad kids and all the kids that get in fights, no, those kids are everywhere. There's kids in need everywhere in our system. So this is going to meet the needs of all students. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Our hub, which stands for Helping, Understanding, and Belonging, all hands on deck. That success team that I just showed you, all these people at the very bottom, this is who's going to be at these tables on. Right now, we're looking at Monday mornings. We're going to be focused on who these kids that are struggling. You got to understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to put filters in place so we don't lose any kids, okay? Because we don't want dropouts. We understand that that's going to be an issue. It's been an issue since you guys were all in school. It's going to continue an issue. And back here to my right, we have Mr. Gama, who works with SkillSource. SkillSource is still going to, they're a stakeholder. They're part of what we do. We send kids back and forth all the time, and we communicate on a regular basis. But all hands on deck represents, we're going to do everything in our power to help. So just because, yes, I'm assigned truancy, that doesn't mean I'm not going to help with behavior, because there's certain skill sets that each of us have as administrators, but we're going to help each other in order to be successful in our system. Are we going to save every student? Probably not, but we're going to try. That's our ultimate goal. So some of the intentional student support systems, and I'm almost done, guys, that we're going to be doing is the freshman pack is going to continue just as it is. The Husky Hub will also, this is going to be brand new. And if you want to know where it's going to be located, it's in the current technology building in the back, close to the tennis courts. This is where these facilities will be at. There'll be a lot of staff members there. But there's kids that just cannot, they need a special learning environment or a different learning environment. They might need a different format. For example, they can't come to school from 7:40 until 2:30 p.m. So we'll modify their days based off of what their needs are, whether it's maybe they have to work, maybe they have to do something different. Credit alignment for both OHS and DOHS, that's going to continue. Our online digital learning program is going to continue. I know I talked about it. Some of you may still have some questions about it, but it's a digital platform that we use. We use Edgenuity, and we've been using Odysseyware. We will continue with Mrs. Jones currently who's running that program along with the assistance of Mrs. Alvarado. But that is a learning environment that is absolutely necessary for students that just have different needs, whether it's mental health issues or whether it's their, I guess it would be physically related issues or even medically related issues as well. And then we have this brand new program that we're going to start. It's basically an opportunity program where these are students that absolutely just need a different environment. Rather than sending them home with maybe a packet to work on, this will be a place where these kids can continue to come with staff members that are going to be on site to be able to assist them. They will be using an online platform, but they will not be using it won't be the same as like the online digital learning program, because we operate under the ALE license, which is Alternative Learning Experiences. This will be different. This is also for students that are short-term and long-term suspended. Instead of just suspending a kid on an emergency removal and sending them to the streets or home while we investigate what's happening, no, these kids are still going to be able to come into my building, and then I'm going to be able to meet their needs educationally and in any other way that we have to as well too. So these are some things that we're looking at doing. We've also all year have been involved deeply in the truancy process. Every single county in the state of Washington seems to do it a little bit different. We've been working with Judge Pelabucky a lot this year in trying to reformat our truancy processes, and we're going to continue. Community engagement boards happen right now every other Monday. Again, these are, we clarified at the last school visit, truancy happens to do with students that don't come to school on a regular basis, and those are our kids that we need to find out why they're not coming to school. There's always a reason why. And you guys use the term like lazy learners or something like that. We don't use lazy learners or we basically replace the laziness with like unmotivated. Everybody's motivated by something. We just got to figure out what it is. And once we do, then we have success. And sometimes it's super, super tough to figure out what motivates each and every one of us, including our students. So I hope that was fast enough, but I do want to open it up for questions from the board for Kat or I.
That was really good. I appreciate everything. That was insightful, quick, very nice, very nice. I like that.
Yeah.
That's my type of class. One thing too, where we do, like anytime you guys do stuff with, maybe if it's just the aesthetic side, let us know. We talked about that today at the exec council thing, that, you know, anything, guys. I want the kids in there too. I think it'll be really helpful even if it's just the ASB kids, you want small. Sorry, if it's just the ASB or just like a small pool, like bring us in, because I think it can definitely help you guys a lot. I want to be kind of your arm necessarily. to
So
the
we will
project.
need help aesthetically for the building, Miles, because obviously right now it's just a brown color. We would like to add life to it, so thank you.
I'll paint it black and red.
So going back to the middle of your presentation about keeping kids green, so that's also school-wide, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. Sorry, I was kind of listening to that through a scope of thinking this was specifically for students that will be going to the hub, more of like DOHS students, but I'm happy to hear that it's school-wide, because all students need this.
Yeah. So we would, so just kind of walk you through a mock. So like it's Monday morning, we're all at the table, and let's say we're going through the 10th graders, and we're looking at all 10th graders. We pull up our spreadsheets, and we have all our buckets. We're looking at all the yellow kids. We're looking at all the red kids. We sit around the table, pretend you guys are the success teams. Here's the first student, might be your child. We start talking. Someone says, hey, I know that student. They were in my office the other day. The father just, got arrested last weekend. This is the issue going on. Mom doesn't know what to do. We share that. We figure out, okay, so who wants to tackle that? Someone jumps in, and we basically take the lead. Someone's going to take the lead, and we're going to help those families, because again, every family's different, every need's different. But maybe we have a whole group of kids that are struggling. Maybe it's in the area of a specific content, but maybe the team recommends, hey, why don't we ask Gear Up to focus on like science for that particular week or on that particular lab? So we know that we're gonna send 15 kids who are currently in yellow or maybe red that are struggling in that science class, and they're gonna focus on that. So again, it's developing systems, because it might be different, right? I'm used to living in a world where, so there's green, yellow, red, and then there's really, really red. I live in the system for the last 8 years of the really, really red. These are, our consultant would call it our bleeding kids. These are the kids that are pretty intense. There's a lot going on, and we got to figure out how do we help these kids. And that's where we use resources as outside the box, as like the Washington Youth Academy, where we've had the privilege of graduating 6 or 7 in the last 7 students in the last probably 12 months, which is super, super amazing. And some of these kids, they've just turned their life around. We have some kids on deck. We have one there right now, Alex, who's set to graduate here in July, and we got kids ready to go. So these are the types of programs that some of us, we're aware of these resources, but maybe we can bring them to the table to help a specific student or groups of students.
Okay, for the Skyward report card that we get like after every trimester, it's like very easy to read. Yeah, in algebra you have an A, whatever. How would the SBG one look like? Would it be like very similar, or?
You want me to answer that?
So at the end of each trimester, grades are converted to a letter grade, and so on the report card or on a transcript, they would all look the same.
You guys said you guys were gonna go back over to see Chuck, and you guys were gonna take some kids. Any possible chance you could take these 3?
Yes, all 3 of them are going.
Thank you.
And,
Full report when you get back, Miles.
You guys may also be able to meet Chuck, because he's going to be here next Tuesday when you guys are at the high school doing the barbecue. So I can definitely make sure he comes out and meets
That
you
would be
guys as
great.
well.
I would be excited if that was possible.
Chuck used to be the high school principal and is the one that helped shift Sunnyside High School. And now he does work where he works with other districts and high schools.
The consultant now.
And so he's been working with me and my admin team, and as we've been working on the integration plan, he's been helping us process and think around our systems and how do we realign our supports that we have, because we have a lot of resources at the high school, and how do we realign it so that we can ensure that we're getting all of our, meeting everybody's needs.
Josh, question, if we were to have graduation all with DOHS and OHS, are the kids from DOHS, I guess, what is their feelings about that?
So selfishly, their feelings are to have their own ceremony. However, part of the integration is start taking steps towards joining us together to be unified. So one of the things that we did last week is my office staff and myself, we met and we kind of looked at the pros and cons. Part of the issue right now is that we don't have a very high number of graduates. It's anywhere between 14 to 18 kids this year. So one of the things that we're doing is like, they like that because that's, you know, that's the easy route. But again, with change is hard for all of us, right? But this is a good step in the right direction. And the high school's done an amazing job of all year long incorporating us, including us. And it's hard to get used to because our kids have been used to, you know, Desert Oasis High School. So one of the things a decision that we're going to have to make here, and we're probably going to make it by tomorrow morning, is whether we're going to continue moving forward with our own planning or just combining and having one solid one. Something to also keep in mind is we always include our stakeholder skill source, whether they are GED graduates or alternative high school diploma route graduates, and we include them, and Ms. Atchison has been more than willing to accommodate them as well. So we would all be wearing the same colors, and we would all be graduating because at the end of the day, we're all Othello School District students, and they've all been in our system at one point or another.
I feel like we should clap because that was really a great way to end.
Yeah.
That was great.
You are.
Josh.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate all of your guys' hard work and everything that you've done to push this integration forward. And Josh, especially you for all of your hard work at DOHS all of these years. I know that you were, you know, saying thank you to everyone else, but thank you for your leadership and for all of the things that you've done to make it a success, and for being such a team player in this integration, and all of the great talents and attributes that you have that you're taking to the high school. Just really appreciate you and everything you've done. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Superintendent Perez, do you have anything you'd like to add before we move on?
You know, I think it's what I really appreciated about what we just heard is you heard Kat talk about some of the work with Dr. Selena and keeping kids green and attendance behavior and academics. And then you heard Josh transition into what has been the reality at DOHS for the last 10 years, right? That's what they do there. And can we do that at scale? And I've heard a lot of energy and excitement, particularly from Josh and his team, that because I think they went in with kind of a side eye, like, is this really going to work? But I think the partnership that's developed there tells me the cool things that existed at DOHS, we're going to preserve and we're going to expand. You asked twice, is this for all kids? That's the intent of it. And the expertise that Dr. Selena brings to the project is much of the work and his beliefs about how schools run started in alternative school settings. That's where the concepts come from. It's just, can you do it at scale with 1,500 kids as opposed to 100? And we think it's worth the challenge, and lots of systems being put in place to address that. So I think it's a little bittersweet, you know, the bitterness of having to close that site down, but I think the opportunity and the sweetness of building something better for every kid in Othello, every kid.
Great. Okay, we will move on tonight to our public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight?
No.
Okay, then we will switch to upcoming events. May 5th through the 9th, we have all of our barbecues. Is everybody signed up for their particular sites? Yep, okay. We already went through the calendar previously in our meeting, so we'll skip down to May 27th. Nope, May 12th, which is our next board meeting, and it's at 1 p.m. And then May 19th, we have the middle school site visit. Time is yet to be determined. Oh, you know what? I'm going to rewind even further to May 7th is the AVID year-end event. If you're able to make that, you want us to let you know, Marissa, so you can announce a quorum? So if you're able to make that on May 7th, please let Marissa know if you don't know already right now. That's always a really great event to go to. May 27th, we have another board meeting at 1 p.m. So this will be our last evening board meeting until the end of the summer. We will now move on to our board self-assessment of the meeting.
A lot of good information tonight. Presentations.
Agreed. One of my favorite things about a board meeting like this is a ton of student input. really appreciate our student board members and for everything that they bring to each and every conversation that we have. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys for letting me go on so long. I didn't hear him.
Miles, do you want to say that again?
I said, thank you for letting me go on so long.
Appreciate a really great presentation and our final presentation, which maybe can go in both columns, the bittersweetness of our last presentation from Desert Oasis High School. It's the end of an era.
I want to thank Josh, and I want to thank Pete and John for taking their shots and keep answering back at us, and for the ongoing battle with standard-based learning.
Mhm. A well-planned agenda. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I want to say Miles is very inspiring. Like, well, because he asks very like deep questions that like I don't even think of sometimes. I'm like, Miles, you answered a question I didn't even know I had,
Yeah.
and I just really like it.
Thank you.
Hopefully he's being a really good mentor to you two young ladies. Anything else?
As Miles said, the blob is unifying.
The blob is unifying, yeah. Okay, at this time, the board will recess into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss the performance of a public employee. No action will be taken following the executive session. This meeting is adjourned.